Welcome to the DayMe YouTube page. My name is Dr. David Duizer. I'm a naturopathic doctor in Vancouver, British Columbia, and this presentation is about immune support. This fall is all about immune support, and I'm getting questions every single day. How can I protect myself? How can I keep my immune system strong? And so I decided to do a video for patients and for everyone else looking for some general education about immune supportive techniques. Immune support techniques that you can use that are safe and easy. This presentation is meant to be an evidence-informed presentation. It's basic but essential. If you're looking for advanced immune hacks, this is not the presentation for you. This presentation is about what actually works. How can I actually get an immune supportive benefit from a specific therapy? What can I do? How can I implement something today? So that's what we're trying to achieve here. My clinical practice, I'm a naturopathic doctor. I practice integrative medicine, and I mostly focus on chronic disease management. Many of my patients are immunocompromised, and so we're talking about this. We're talking about this topic every single day, and so it's an honor, it's a privilege for me to be able to speak about this, and a pleasure to give this lecture today. So let's jump right into it. The immune system. Can we optimize immune function? Yes, we absolutely can. There are things that we can do that can give us an immune boost. Can you get an immune boost? Yes, you can get an immune boost. These items that we'll cover today are things that you can definitely do to give yourself some extra protection beyond just general immune defense that your body will do without you even thinking about it. You can take it to another level by following the advice that I give today. Please note this is for educational purposes only, which is why I want to be very clear about what's effective and what are we not sure about. And but in general, we're only going to speak about things that are generally considered safe for most. So naturopathic immune support. Let's start with the basics. This is a high-level overview of what we'll discuss today. The first, of course, most important, proper hygiene, social distance, physical distance, wash your hands, don't touch your face. These are extremely important. They were important before COVID. They weren't discussed before COVID as much, but they were important. When you had a cold, you should stay home. Should have stayed home. When people around you were sick, yes, you may have already thought about washing your hands more frequently, for example. But proper hygiene now, of course, it's on the top of everyone's mind every single day. It's absolutely beneficial. Wearing a mask helps, but staying away from people who are unwell and washing your hands and staying away from large crowds, especially, these are really, really important things. Don't forget them. We won't spend any more time on that. Let's get to the fun stuff. Today we're going to talk about stress management, exercise, sleep quality and quantity, nutrition and specific vitamin supports, and weight control. First, immune support and stress. Yes, stress does weaken the immune system. Stress dysregulates the immune system. The immune system is less efficient when you are stressed. And this has been well documented over time. There are a few really, really good stories about this from some high-profile studies that have been done and talked about in the media many times. I'll mention a few today just because I think they're so interesting. And we can move on. It's well documented that stress suppresses immune function. Here are some specific examples for how that has been determined. One is from a study from, which I don't have the reference for in front of me, but one is from a study from the 80s or maybe early 90s, where they tested med school students' immune responses during exam week. So they would have 3 days of exams, and they would assess their immune function during that time, and it turned out to be weaker than less robust than their immune function not during exam time. I thought that was just very simple. I believe they tested natural killer cells in that study. I'm not 100% sure, but basically that's the first I heard about an actual study being done. It was samples taken before and samples taken during exam weeks. During exam weeks, immune system less robust, less active. But two specific studies I'd like to cover today. One is called Chronic Stress Modulates the Immune Response to a Pneumococcal Pneumonia Vaccine. Very, very cool study where they assessed the antibody levels of caregivers of dementia patients, and they assessed former caregivers, and they assessed control, all after getting a vaccine. And so they were looking to see if there were differences in the immune response following the vaccine in these three groups: people who were actively supporting those with dementia, people who had done that before, and controls who were neither. And it turned out that the IgG antibody response, the delayed antibody response, was weakest in those who were actively caring for dementia patients. And, it makes sense. It's a very stressful job. It's a very stressful responsibility to have. It makes sense that it would show some immune suppression, but this was very clear. They had less antibody response after a vaccine that's meant to induce an antibody response. So pretty clear. It was a good study. They had the timings for this study. Caregivers showed deficits relative to controls in their antibody responses to vaccination. Yes, although the groups did not differ before vaccination or in the rise in antibody 2 weeks or 1 month after vaccination, current caregivers had lower antibody titers 3 and 6 months after vaccination than either former caregivers or controls. So basically, in the first couple months, it was the same response, but that response did not last. The next study that I wanted to cover today was one called Loneliness, Social Network Size, and Immune Response to Influenza Vaccine in College Freshmen. So another one where they gave people a vaccine and saw what the immune response was like. And it turned out that the real thing I got from this was the college freshmen with who were experiencing the highest levels of loneliness and had the smallest social network, but also had the highest cortisol response. Those with the highest stress hormone response had the weakest response to a vaccine, the absolute weakest response to a vaccine. So loneliness, social network size, those correlated really well to poor vaccination response, but also high stress hormone levels were present in those with the lowest vaccine response. So it's really, if you're going for a vaccine, it makes sense to not go when you're very stressed, for sure. But in general, keeping stress low allows for proper immune responses. And so really important right now to keep that top of mind, practicing mindfulness techniques, practicing whatever it takes to keep your stress low at this time. That's stress. Let's move on to exercise. So exercise and the immune system. Yes, they are related. From the Journal of Sport and Health Science, 2019, acute exercise is an immune system adjuvant that improves defense activity and metabolic health. So we know exercise is good for metabolic health. But what about immune response? When we talk about this, when I talk about this topic, I often get the feedback about the concern that exercise suppresses the immune system. We all heard that before. Too much exercise, bad for you, makes your immune system weaker and makes you more susceptible to infection. That is true, but though that level of exercise is a lot higher than what you think. It's exercising for greater than 1 hour at greater than 60% of your output capacity. So that's a lot of exercise. And that's per day. That's very, very intense. Many marathoners don't do that in their training because they know it's going to make them weak. Many people who are training for long, slow distance events are not training for longer than 1 hour a day. It makes them depleted. This is just not going to be happening for 99% of us. We're not going to be able to train at a high level for 60 minutes per day. First of all, who has that amount of time? Second of all, the amount of work it takes to get to that level where you can actually participate in that much physical output is significant. So don't worry about overtraining with respect to your immune response. What is important is exercise in general. Moderate exercise for less than 60 minutes gives you an immune boost. It helps give you an acute immune response that can be helpful in the prevention of infection. Exercise is good for the immune system. So the study that I have here that I'll share in the notes, I'll share the link to, is called Exercise or Enhanced Immunosurveillance with Acute Exercise Bouts of Less than 60 minutes. And what they found was exercise bouts of less than 60 minutes were increased the antipathogen activity of tissue macrophages, increased the increased neutrophil count, natural killer cell count, cytotoxic T cell count, immature B cell count. And each of these plays a critical role in immune defense activity and metabolic health. Acute exercise bouts preferentially mobilize natural killer cells and CD8 T lymphocytes that exhibit high cytotoxicity and tissue migrating potential. Basically, what we're reading here is that acute exercise activates the immune system. It makes it more vigilant, and it does it in a multifaceted way, which means you're getting a response from the entire immune cascade that is the innate immune system. That part of the immune system that responds when there's a threat in the environment. Basically, that entire response system is upregulated following acute exercise. So exercise, this is all sounding very basic, but what I want to do is take the basics and go deep, because a lot of people are coming to me and saying, how can I do this or that, or will this help or that help? We definitely know that stress reduction and daily exercise are going to help. Those are two things we know for sure. What else is going to help? A solid night's sleep is going to help with immune support. So this slide is immune support and sleep, and it's from a study from JAMA 2016. Association of insufficient sleep with respiratory infection among adults in the United States. Let's dive into this. So what they looked for here was what is the level at which insomnia, lack of sleep, poor sleep quality, what is the level at which the immune system will begin to suffer? And so what they looked at was respiratory infections, and looked for some correlations after following some surveys of how many hours people are sleeping. And so it's not the most, it doesn't give us the most specific. It's not like they're using an Oura Ring or some sleep tracker or some awesome device to say what the quality of sleep is. And these studies this study that I'm speaking of specifically wasn't standardized for many other lifestyle things. I don't believe. Okay, to account for possible confounding, analysis were adjusted for age, sex, race, education, household income, marital status, smoking status, physical activity, body mass index, and survey year. Okay, so that's pretty good. Nutrition is not included, and so that's unfortunate, but almost everything else is. So this was a study of 22,000 Americans from NHANES. This NHANES study is a place where we get, you can look back and get lots of epidemiological data from. So what they looked for was they reported whether or not they had a head or chest cold, or an infection, including influenza, pneumonia, or an ear infection in the past 30 days. And so then they looked at how many hours per night were they sleeping in those 30 days. Of those people, 13% reported sleeping for 5 hours or less per night, 23 for 6 hours, 56 for 7 to 8 hours, and 7% for 9 hours or more. And what they found was, among those who slept 6 to 9 hours, no associations observed. Those who had a sleep disorder that they told the researchers about were more likely to have a head or chest cold. That's important. Short sleepers, less than 5 hours, more likely to report a head or chest cold and infection in the past 30 days, according to the results of the multivariable logistic regression analysis adjusted for age and sex. So the reports of this study are that less than 5 hours of sleep per night, which is very little, but you'd be surprised if you're getting more than 5 and you think that's 5 is very little. We see a lot of people getting less than 5. We definitely know immune function starts to go down in a way that is quantifiable after sleeping for less than 5 hours for 30 days in a row. People report more heads and chest colds. Now, let's say this was done over 12 months. Maybe it's creeping up towards 6 hours. Maybe it's creeping up towards 7 hours. We know for sure if we look at this many people for 30 days, the reports are going to be higher with 5 hours or less. So that's significant for me, considering I see a lot of people who sleep less than 5 hours. What I think we have to do from this is we have to take from this is that sleep is important, and achieving adequate sleep is important in maintaining solid immune function. So immune system dysregulation can begin to occur with lack of sleep, period. Now, what comes with lack of sleep? With lack of sleep, all of a sudden we can have cortisol dysregulation, stress hormone, and which we know when it's elevated is associated with reduced immune function. So we have to watch out for that. What I know from clinical practice is that when people don't sleep well enough, they begin to eat poorly because they need to find more calories to give them energy, which my view is that increased caloric consumption will suppress immune function. And so sleep is also important for this holistic approach, which is to maintain stress levels, make sure you're exercising, and keep nutrition solid. Next up, immune support and nutrition. So what I'm looking at here is from Frontiers in Immunology 2018, Nutritional Modulation of Immune Function, Analysis and Evidence, Mechanisms, and Clinical Relevance. So what I wanted to cover here is, like, people come to me and they say, should I be taking high-dose vitamin C? Should I be taking, doing lots and lots of vitamin D? Should I be taking zinc every day? We use those nutrients on an individual basis, and for many people there can be value. Let's face it, many people are not achieving adequate levels of nutrient in their diet, and they need to be supplemented. For certain categories of people, there is strong evidence for the reduction reduction of viral infection incidence through the use of certain supplementation. So, for example, the several controlled trials investigated whether zinc supplementation is protective against infection in the elderly population, and one study we know with 20 milligrams of zinc and 100 micrograms of selenium for 2 years associated in a significant decrease in infections in institutionalized elderly, greater than 65, who were institutionalized. In another study, in an older cohort, 35% of zinc deficient, the zinc deficient participants in the study who were then supplemented with zinc had a reduction in common colds. And so, yes, we know that elderly are deficient in zinc, and if they begin to take zinc, there's likely an immune benefit. If there is an assessment, a study, for example, a blood test that shows a low level of zinc and it's replenished, there's likely a benefit for the reduction in risk of a common cold. Does that mean everyone should take zinc? No, it does not. So be cautious with the use of nutrients. Better to do it on an individualized basis at the advice of your healthcare provider. What we do know, however, is that poor diets, in general, diets that are not well-rounded, diets that do not include a broad spectrum of nutrients, reduce immune function. In populations of the world where nutritional requirements cannot be met, or it's too difficult to meet, or they are too difficult to meet, we know that the susceptibility to infection is higher. And so what does that mean for us? It means we need to eat a varied diet. It means we need to get tons and tons of nutrients from food. We need to get lots of vegetables and fruits. We need to get a good amount of whole grains, nutrient-rich whole grains. We need to have adequate protein. Protein is absolutely required for the development of immune cells and for immune system recovery following infection. So yes, we do need to be getting a solid diet with the idea that a well-rounded, well-balanced diet is going to support immune function. Now, there's a limit here. You can have a well-balanced, well-organized diet, and you can also eat too many calories. Eating too many calories can suppress the immune system. Overeating is bad for immune function. So, yes, it's important to get a varied diet and to get lots and lots of healthy, good, non-processed, organic food if you absolutely can. At the same time, it's very, very important not to overeat. So please be mindful of that and take that very seriously. I also wanted to mention, I spoke about the elderly and zinc. There's also a significant potential for children to become deficient in zinc. That doesn't mean that all children should take zinc. It means that if you're thinking about immune support, consult with someone who has an idea, someone who knows how to test for nutrient deficiency before providing high levels of nutrients. There are risks to all supplements, and so be cautious before you give a lot. Everyone is asking me about vitamin D this year. Everyone is asking. Now, here in Canada, the government has been recommending the use of vitamin D for many years. Most Canadians are deficient, and we know it is used in so many cellular processes, including immune cells, that it's absolutely very important, and deficiencies can be dangerous. The question becomes, in specific infections, is supporting vitamin D and taking high levels going to be helpful for reducing incidence and for helping speed recovery from infection? For many different infections, we don't know how helpful it is. What we do know is that increased susceptibility to infection is associated with low levels of vitamin D. And so vitamin D correlates well with high incidence of infection. People who have lower levels of vitamin D get sick more often. What we're seeing right now is on the COVID side of things, we're seeing that people who have the worst cases of COVID, the most severe, tend to have the lowest vitamin D levels. Does that mean that low vitamin D predisposes people to the worst, most severe COVID experience? No, it does not. It's a correlation, but not causation. Now, we may find out in years from now that there was causation and that supporting vitamin D could be helpful, but we just don't know right now. We just don't know, which is why integrative practitioners and functional medical practitioners and many conventional medical practitioners are suggesting vitamin D testing just get to know what your level is, get to know if you're low or not. If you're low, absolutely harmless to bring the level back up to the normal range. There can be harm if you go above the normal range, so please be cautious. But it is important to get tested to know where your levels are and to know how much you need to take and for how long. And so I think that is where I stand on the vitamin D vitamin D right now. The reason it is interesting is because we know all white blood cells, I think almost all, if not all, have vitamin D receptors. So vitamin D is important for the regulation and the activation and the effectiveness of immune cells. And so deficiency is definitely going to negatively impact the immune system. The question is, are you deficient? The only way to know is through testing. Okay, immune support and weight control. What I'll be speaking about today is a good one from the American Association for Cancer Research, how diet, obesity, and even gum disease may affect immune system and cancer. Diet-induced obesity impacts and impairs both innate and adaptive immune responses. The innate immune response is like that initial defense you have. That's just like exposed to something for the first time. The immune system responds. What the heck is going on here? How can we support? And the immune system comes in and prevents infection from seeding and spreading. Being in the obese category in the body mass index scale reduces the effectiveness of the innate immune system. That response, that immediate immune response, is not as efficient if we are of an unhealthy body weight. Really, really important. So when we're talking about immune defense, yes, exercise, sleep, nutrition, stress reduction, but weight control needs to be on the list. Weight control absolutely needs to be on the list. And so achieving a healthy weight should be a top priority when you're thinking about how to improve the immune system. So at some point it comes down to what is going to be the best bang for our buck here? What can we do to participate in a high level immune response? Well, we can work on weight loss. We can work on getting the weight under control. So I'd like to read a little bit about a mouse study looking at weight control and immune response. This one is from the University of Texas. Diet-induced obesity impairs innate and adaptive immune responses. What they looked at, this is from University of Texas. They compared the immune system function of lean, overweight, and obese mice. The mice only differed in their body fat. They wanted to tease out whether it was the weight or the body fat that impaired immune function. Again, they gave them a vaccine, and with the idea they were going to stimulate the immune response. Following that immune response, those in the highest weight, those who had the highest body fat, had the worst immune responses to the vaccine. So very similar to the stress studies we looked at earlier, similar to those that we covered. Those with the highest body fat had the least immune response when giving a vaccine, a very good indicator for innate immunity. And so what we want to do here is we want to double down on staying lean. And of course, exercise and nutrition are the main two pillars for those. So that takes us back. So that's kind of how it all ties in. Now, as a broad overview here, what we spoke about today was how to actually optimize immune function for the fall, for the winter, for the flu season, for right now? What can we do on a day-to-day basis to keep our immune system absolutely 100% vigilant? Well, this is the list. Other than that, those hygiene principles we covered earlier, we need to sleep well. We need to keep stress low. We need to manage obesity. We need to exercise every day. And we need to have a really, really, really healthy diet, and then personalize our supplementation using the advice of our healthcare provider. So what do? What's next? Consult your healthcare provider. Consult your integrative practitioner, consult your naturopathic doctor, consult your medical doctor. Ask about what you can do specifically. Now, initially, what will happen is likely there'll be a review of the things we covered today, because that's where you get most of your value for your effort. What comes along with these? Comorbidities. If you're thinking about if you're thinking about improving your immune system and what you need to do is lose weight, at the same time you'll likely be talking about blood sugar control and cholesterol control. If, for example, you're dealing with a chronic disease that impacts immune function, maybe there's some real work to be done on that front. And then you can move on to optimization. Optimization is what treatments, what supportive therapies can I do to help myself? Should I be supplementing? Should I be doing anything beyond this? Your practitioner will help you. Putting it all together, this is what we covered today. Don't forget these five. These five are the absolute key. Stress, exercise, sleep, nutrition, and weight control. Well-documented, evidence-informed, immune-boosting principles will be to optimize these 5 categories. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I think that a high-level overview like this is really, really important at this time. And so that's really why I wanted to do this, just to really hammer it home that if you're thinking about going the extra mile with regards to immune optimization this fall, first make sure that you have your basics covered. First make sure that these 5 are under control. If, for example, you're sleeping well and your stress is controlled, also at the same time make sure you're eating really, really well, a really varied diet that includes all the macro and micronutrients that you need. At the same time, focus on weight control. Make sure you're in the normal category, the body mass index. If you need support for any of these goals, please let me know. I can help. If you have a practitioner in your area who's a naturopathic doctor, consult with them and go for some detailed, personalized advice. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day. If you like this episode, please subscribe to this channel, like the video, leave me a comment. Thanks again for watching, and we'll talk again soon.